Good morning, everyone. This is Shepard here with a world exclusive. Fortunately, I was able to get a trip over to PAX West where they were demonstrating the Monster Hunter World demo. And I was very lucky to be able to play with a couple of other hunters who I'll be introducing shortly. The nice thing about the demo was we did actually get an opportunity to kind of figure out where the Rathalos was. So there's been a good amount of content out there, especially by Eric's, which has been very good, showing off the different weapon styles, but we haven't had a chance yet to really see how the fight against the Rathalos goes and really how different he is. So this time around I decided to use the bow. With me are a couple other hunters, Hot Sammy Sliz, he's using a longsword, Kogath from the wiki is using the greatsword, and Omnitoad, I believe, is using the gunlance. Now, one thing I'll have to say straight away throughout this entire fight, this is our maybe second or third go at playing the game at all ever. So the controls are switched around a little bit. Of course, with like native PlayStation 4 controllers, there are a lot more buttons to use. So there are certain inputs that we're doing that you might look at and say, wow, like, that's not what I would do in this situation. I will say the game feels great once you get used to it, but especially in the beginning here, as we're still just figuring out the weapons for the first time, we get beat up. So you can see right off the bat, I get into a pretty tough place. I want to heal, so I'm scrolling through all my different materials. I see, oh, there's a Mega Potion. And the healing actually happens pretty quickly, but you'll see now that it actually doesn't go up instantly. It's a gradual recovery, so that's kind of like a little bit of a balancing technique, I think, between the fact that you can now move while consuming potions. And I pretty quickly figure out that I think the highest damage combo with the bow and arrow is doing the level 2 shot, followed by the power shot, followed by this dragon shot. The biggest challenge, though, with that, of course, is it really does lock you into place as you're charging up that final shot there. And if you miss it, you of course will have a lot of ways to damage, but if you hit it, you'll see I'm doing a ton of 20 and 25 damage whenever that lands. Something else you'll notice with the bow is you'll see that reticle there. When it's fully lit up, you're within a critical distance of being able to do the maximum damage that you do. And in fact, if you're really far outside of the critical distance, it will not light up at all. It will stay out of range. Now, this was our second time fighting him. The first time around, we actually got him to fall down that waterfall. Unfortunately, one of the players disconnected, so we had to go ahead and try it again. So we didn't get to see that here, but he can be affected, assuming he's actually not in the air. Something else I want to note, and I didn't really get much of a chance to talk about it, is there are a number of different armor skills that were available in the demo. And it's interesting in that the design is a little bit more simple. In that, you know, you can get by now without a full 10 points in a certain skill. And there are certain images floating around of people that actually had the time to take images of this. But you can get a partial benefit from even like 3 or 5 attack now, if I remember correctly, which is pretty decent. It just makes it a lot easier to get, you know, mixed armor sets to work well together. So you'll see he's been paralyzed a bunch of times. I haven't even used any parashots on him. That's because in the demo, all players had 5 various poison and paralysis knives that can actually be shot with the slinger. And I will demonstrate that a little bit later on in the demo. But at least for us, it really did make the fight go a lot easier. So we had heard some complaints that Rathalos spent a lot of time up in the air when people were trying to fight him. I would say he's almost very similar to the way he was in Generations. If anything, at least when we were fighting him, he almost had a little bit of an emphasis to stay on the ground a little bit longer. Okay, so here you can see I'm not even sure if I would call that an eating animation so much as I'm just going to mess you up animation. And I think my favorite part about that is the woman from the base camp is trying to say, hey, you should look for the right time. And I'm immediately saying, nope, I'm out. I'm getting out of here.
How goes the exploring? Try to piece together the monster's trail.
Yeah, the handler's like, hey, you're not supposed to be fighting that Rathalos. Why are you doing this?
Go get a closer look.
So there are two things now. When you're actively fighting a monster, there's almost a bit of an automatic paintball in that he will automatically show up on your map. Not only that, but if you get used to observing your scout flies, they will actually guide you directly to the monster. Now, I'm not going to pretend to say that there's a moment in this where like I'm actively chasing after the scout flies because I was still getting used to them. My understanding is that you really just want to wait if you're looking for them, because if you're a little bit farther away or you're moving around too much, the scout flies won't be around long enough to actually guide you to where you need to go. So almost think of it like when you're looking at the balloon, the feline balloon, and wanting to wave at it, you'd have to wait in place for a little while. That's what you're going to want to do with your scout flies. Okay, so here you can see an absolute insane amount of verticality. Unfortunately, I don't know how to really control myself when I'm going around like that. You can see that I just equipped the paralysis knife to my slinger. And I just jumped off a wall. But that's, again, I think if I used the X button, I would have been able to move via the grappling hook, but I think I was afraid of just, you know, wasting too much time of figuring out those controls. So that's why I decided to just climb up normally. I think somebody here actually might get a ride. Yeah, so Kogath's on it. And of course, we haven't had enough time to try it out to get the full ride mechanics to see, you know, what the best thing to do when another person's riding it. I can only assume that the total amount of damage that's done to the monster will cause them to trip. Something I haven't showed off too much, but it's only because I was getting kind of addicted to doing that triple combo there, is if you evade after a shot here, you can immediately do a level 3 shot. And that was probably the most damage I did in the entire fight, that little shot right there. I don't know if this is him just growling or if it's him getting exhausted. He's not drooling. So I'm out of my power coatings now. So the only thing that I have left, but it's interesting that they give you unlimited of them, and I don't know if it's going to be the same way in the full game, is you have unlimited close range coatings. So it's almost like a way of saying, okay, you're out of your good coatings, so if you want to continue to do good damage, you're going to have to fight a little bit riskier. It's worth pointing out that this Rathalos is probably not intended to be killed in any way, shape, or form. We are all using the most basic of basic weapons against him, and we're given 20 minutes. I'm not trying to spoil anything. Okay, so here I'm switching over to the slinger, and you can see I'm just popping out those shots with the R2 button there. And you can kind of get like a little bit of a sticky reticle there. He's been paralyzed so many times, though, at this point, that it wasn't enough. Okay, you saw the scout flies just go behind me as we try desperately to figure out where the heck we're going to have to go. So, I'm just going to try and take a little piece of this Rathalos tail. Why not? It's nice and chunky looking.
wildlife map keeps track of where you are and where the
So you can see he's gone kind of far. He's almost back to the nest that he was in the beginning. Unfortunately, again, when you're under the tight time constraints, you're kind of like, okay, scout flies, what are you doing to me, buddy? They like went up and then they went back, right?
Good look at the wildlife map and pay close attention to your scout flies too.
Yeah, part of the issue is like, okay, we know he's in that direction, but, you know, you need to be navigating now, not only, you know, on an XY axis, but a Z axis as well. So even once you get over to where he is, you need to make sure you're going to be at the right level. I like how we all automatically just said, no worries, buddy. It's worth pointing out that that sort of etiquette is extremely common in Japanese communities. I think that Rathalos squeezing himself through like a tight corridor kind of made my life. So here I am switching over to the poison knives on the slinger. And right there I did an arc shot. I'm always very careful to use arc shots too often. I don't want to disrupt my fellow hunters. It's a great thing to use, especially if you have lots of ranged players or if you're playing solo. But you don't want to be tripping your buddies. I'm still not sure exactly how I feel about playing with the damage numbers on. I've theorized earlier that it's something that I definitely wouldn't mind doing in terms of testing, but I'm not sure that I like it in terms of like actively playing with them as I'm hunting. I think it makes you feel too bad if you're not hitting the right spot. You're like, wow, I could have been doing 20 damage rather than 14 damage. That was just me firing off the slinger shots. You saw I was even able to kind of fire them while running away a little bit as well. So an interesting thing is you notice that I was just highlighting the sleep herbs earlier, and here I'm getting wrecked again. It's terrible. You know, you almost have a very good idea of what you're gathering before you gather it. Which one thing that's always been frustrating, at least in gathering quests, is you're like, hey, I know I need something from this area, but is this going to give me what I need? I think now you will almost always see exactly what it is you need. I couldn't quite tell you what I'm doing here. I was getting panicked, I think, maybe. So this is getting relatively close to the 15-minute limit I had for recording video. I do have some other videos that I'm going to be going through later on. One thing, though, I want to make sure everyone does is definitely make sure to check out Sammy and Toad's Twitch pages. Those guys stream Monster Hunter very regularly. They do a great job there. And, of course, Kogath is the one that is running the wiki, kind of the person responsible for a lot of us and our collective knowledge together. So definitely make sure to check those guys out. If they end up, you know, if I end up using their footage or if they end up using the footage as well, you know, this fight wouldn't have been possible without them. So this time it seems like the scout flies are doing some good. Like I can really tell where the monster is now. And right now we're taking a look at this trap here. And this is almost going to be like a teaser. If I can recover the footage afterwards, I'll just say it owns pretty hard. We'll have to see. All right. Thanks for watching this part, guys.